Shohei Ohtani's dad strength hasn't kicked in yet. He's struggling at the plate, but here's why we shouldn't be worried. Let's talk about it on Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. This is the daily podcast covering the World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. You can find us wherever you find podcasts and on YouTube. All you got to do is search for Locked On Dodgers. You can become an everydayer by listening and watching every day. You can make that easier by subscribing and get notified when our episodes are ready or when we're going live on YouTube like we are here on Wednesday night. If this is your first time listening or watching, welcome. I'm Vince Samperio. That's Jeff Snyder. And we've been Locked On Dodgers since 2019. We've both covered the Dodgers in a few different ways for over 10 years. And we're here to talk about the Dodgers. And speaking of 10 years, Shohei Ohtani has a 10-year contract with the Dodgers. He is in year 2. And the last week of year 2 of the contract hasn't been the greatest of the deal so far.
Yeah, it's probably been the worst of the deal so far. I'm looking at his time last year. He didn't have many slumps last year. And, when he did, looks like his OPS for the season dipped below 1,000 briefly a couple times. But yeah, for the most part, Ohtani was just consistent after that first week of last year. Right now, he is struggling over the last 10 or so games. He's he's been really bad. And it mixed in there. Those games were interrupted by his time on paternity leave. Obviously, having a wife who's about to give birth is a stressful time. Having a wife who just gave birth is a stressful time, especially when you fly across the country to be away from her and your newborn baby. And so it might just be that. But whatever the reason, he's been lousy the last week and a half or 2 weeks.
Yeah, and when Ohtani, there's people out there that kind of say, Ohtani's swing is obviously not normal, I guess is the word, that it does, it wouldn't work for everybody. And that's true. But yeah, when Ohtani's swing and when he's, kind of out of his element, it doesn't look great. Not that it matters if it looks great or not when you're bad. It just matters what you look like when you're good. And hopefully that's something we get to see soon from Ohtani. But it was a matter of, us talking a lot about, okay, Ohtani's, hitting relatively well, but he hasn't had many chances with runners in scoring position or even runners on base in general. That's still kind of where we're at with Ohtani. He hasn't necessarily had the most at-bats or runners on, but, you look at this game and he came in to the plate with the chance to do something to get the Dodgers a tie or put them ahead, and it didn't work out. And with Ohtani right now, something that we've always felt with him is, the ability to think he's going to do something. And, right now we're at a point, and it's not for the rest of the season, but for right now, it's like, I don't know if he's going to do something.
Yeah, there's definitely not that confidence level right now. I have a hard time being too stressed about it just because it's not like he forgot how to hit. And it's not even like if this was the start of the season, I'd be worried. Okay, is it the shoulder surgery? Is it, the pitching rehab? Is it all that stuff? But the fact is that he's still hitting the ball hard earlier this season. So I can't say it's not at all related to the shoulder surgery, but he definitely didn't lose all his strength from the surgery, and so while it is his first prolonged-ish slump with the Dodgers, it's not the first prolonged slump of his career, and he has bounced out of it every time. So it's just like, I don't know. Shohei Ohtani's going to hit. Will he have as good a numbers as last year? I have no idea. But he's going to hit the ball. It's just a matter of when, and whether it's he's pressing right now or he's stressed or he's just in a funk like hitters get sometimes. I know he's going to come out of it, and obviously I hope that happens on Friday against Paul Skeens. That's a easy guy to get out of your slump against. But you know what? One of these days, and maybe it will just take the other Pirates
pitchers. Last year.
Yeah, he did after Skeens got him. But even if he doesn't get Skeens, maybe he gets the other Pirates pitchers and or the Marlins pitchers.
Yeah, with Ohtani, I mean, the Dodgers had a pretty solid offensive performance in this game. They had a good offensive performance in the game before that. But I think when it came down to it, when you need to, have good at bats and do something, in this game, they had a few chances late in the game, couldn't do it. And they had a few chances, or even in extra innings in Tuesday's game, that they didn't score that run home. And it's kind of a given that you're going to score at least one run in extra innings, or that, should be. And then you kind of figure it out from there. But with Ohtani, I think it's very similar to the entire team, and something that Robert talked about 2 weeks ago, and it's changed a little bit, but hasn't necessarily changed too much, is that guys seem to be going up there either with no plan or just looking to. Dodgers are known for grinding out at bats, getting starting pitchers out of the game early, and then moving on to the next. And even with the string of good starting pitchers they faced recently, I mean, Boyd, the first 2 innings, had thrown 17 pitches, and they've had a lot of pitchers get deep into games that, didn't necessarily have the best stuff. They were just kind of swinging early, pitching, letting the other guy pitch contact, stuff like that. So I think overall, the Dodgers in general are having this issue. Ohtani's definitely having this issue right now. It seems like he's down in the count a lot more often than we're used to.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it still is. We're talking 10, 11 games. So it still is a small sample size. And so it's almost impossible to diagnose why is this happening. Even if you just throw the fact that, like, of those 10 games, you've had 2 of them against Matthew Boyd and 1 against Shohei Ohtani and, 1 against Tyler Mahle, a bunch of guys who are good pitchers. Now, yes, Shohei Ohtani last year beat up good pitchers too. That's what Shohei Ohtani could do. But, it's definitely not one thing. And it's impossible for us to identify, okay, which percentage is the pitching and which percentage is the baby and which percentage is just a good old-fashioned baseball slump. But, since I am confident that it's 0% he's bad at baseball now, it's just kind of, let's sit back and see when he comes out of it. And, he's going to put in the work. He's a hardworking guy. He's committed to being very good. And one way or another, he's going to come out of it.
Yeah, ultimately, when we talked about a lot of this stuff with the Dodgers, and we're obviously more optimistic than some others. It's easy to just say, well, we just have to wait and see, or they should be playing better, or they're going to play better. Now, sometimes that might be, glass half full kind of looks for this. Like, yeah, we think, guys at the bottom of the order should hit better. We think, some of these guys should be doing better. With Ohtani, that's probably, more of that's the normal reaction. You should be like, okay, Shohei Ohtani, even at his worst, hasn't been as bad as this, especially over the course of the season, especially, knowing what we know about Ohtani and, maybe Mookie getting going, gets Ohtani going, and maybe, everybody kind of getting going. Mookie had a couple hits in this game, so that was good to see. But, yeah, this is the one time where we can, definitively say, maybe not the one time, but this is the time we can definitively say he's going to play better. And it's just a matter of when, not if.
Yeah, there's guys on this team we can't say that for sure about. I don't know about Michael Conforto. I definitely don't know about Kike Hernandez. I unfortunately think I do know about Chris Taylor and Miguel Rojas and Austin Barnes, but, Shohei Ohtani is not those guys. He is going to be better.
Yeah, and like I said, hopefully that starts sooner rather than later. Maybe a trip back home will help him out. I will be interested to see, or if he gets asked about it, if he does speak to the media. Ohtani's a guy that sleeps, 9-10 hours a night. I don't know if Mamiko is going to let him get away with that when there's a baby in the house. So
yeah, maybe that's why he was so eager to get back with the team after the baby was born, so he could go back to his sleep schedule.
Yeah. Blake Snell, there was an injury update. Tony Gonsolin, there was another rehab start. These two are pretty big moving forward for the Dodgers pitching, so we're going to get into that. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into hundreds of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed as easily as you stream your favorite shows. It's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. This is perfect for those of you that maybe don't have a console or want to take your console on the go, but don't want to deal with carrying it. This will help you out because you can play high quality Xbox games at a fraction of the cost of a console, and it's more affordable and easier to travel with you, allowing you to take your games wherever you plug in. So go check this out right now. I'm not much of a gamer, but that's because I don't want to pay for a console, and this is right up that alley because I can become a gamer and not have to get that console. So make sure to go check out Amazon Fire TV Stick 4K. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass, Ultimate subscription, and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K, Fire TV Stick 4K Max, and Fire TV Cube. I want to thank you for making Locked On Dodgers one of the listens of your day. First listen, last listen, any listen of your day. We appreciate you. And, you can go check out, go beyond the podcast and go to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers to join our exclusive Discord server and to get updated with the Dodgers. And if you are a Locked On Dodgers insider, you would have gotten a text today about Blake Snell. And he was supposed to throw a bullpen, and he did not throw a bullpen because he didn't feel great after playing catch yesterday and is shut down for the time being. Obviously, this is not ideal information. It definitely would put him, whenever he does start throwing again, he's probably going to have to make at least a rehab start. It's putting him probably a month away at this point at the earliest. The good news is that Tony Gonsolin made a rehab start and got up to 79, 80 pitches and looked pretty good. And all this to say that this bullpen game was a little bit of a product of Blake Snell being out. And so far, Blake Snell's turn in the rotation has not fared well at all. So Tony Gonsolin could not come back sooner.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it would have been nice if Gonsolin could have come back a week or two ago, so they wouldn't have needed to do a bullpen game. They're still going to have to do some sort of bullpen games or spot starts probably over the next couple of weeks because they do have fewer days off coming up. And knowing that Blake Snell won't be back, we talked the other day about them possibly going to a 6-man rotation even before Ohtani is pitching. Maybe those chances go down of a true 6-man rotation, but we probably are still going to see that revolving door of Justin Robleski, Landon Knack, and Bobby Miller making spot starts once in a while. Hopefully they can get away from the bullpen games because the bullpen, well, they've taken advantage of a lot of off days so far, so that even though, like we talked about the other day, guys have pitched in a high percentage of the games, it hasn't really been major overwork, but we're kind of past that point now. Now with the schedule after tomorrow's day off, the schedule the next few weeks doesn't lend itself to that. And so they are going to have to go with the spot start route. And so, yeah, at times they're going to have to hope, okay, well, maybe Justin Robleski can beat the Marlins or, whatever it is. But it sure would have been nice to have Blake Snell back along with Tony Gonsolin. But yeah, like you said, this is probably at least a month because we're looking at, I'd say at least 2 weeks of rehab after he's ready to go. And so even if tomorrow he wakes up feeling great, they're not going to say, okay, go ahead and throw now. They're going to, have him shut down for a week or whatever, and then start throwing. And then if everything goes perfectly, then, a week or two after that, he's ready to go on a rehab assignment. And, how many starts he needs depends on how long he's out. It's, we've reached a point where we're not going to be counting on seeing Blake Snell anytime soon.
Yeah. Ultimately, as long as this isn't something that hampers him or takes him out for the entire year, we can point to, well, as long as he's healthy for October, we'll be fine. It's not ideal. Blake Snell talked about wanting to be the workhorse for this team and, wanting to be the guy that takes the ball every 5 days. And, we didn't even get a month into the season, and that's already not the case. But, you can have the revisionist history and think about, Blake Snell in a negative connotation at the moment and think that it was a mistake. Or, I've seen Max Fried's name mentioned here in the chat. Max Fried was hurt last year too. So, you don't know when guys are going to get hurt. You can't necessarily plan for it. It just happens that way. But it did come at a time for the Dodgers when it wasn't ideal because they didn't have somebody to come up and replace him. They tried to patch it together. That didn't work out. But now, Tony Gonsolin has looked really good in his rehab start so far. He looked really good in the spring. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate well, but he's always been good when healthy. And if he's healthy right now, he's probably going to be good. So we're going to count on that to be true and hope that, the Dodgers can keep this going. And, for the terms of the bullpen, yeah, guys are going to have to be a little bit more efficient. And they've been efficient. Like, in the last week or so, even Dustin May starting as bad as he did yesterday ended up giving them a little bit of length, more so than maybe they would have if they didn't have a bullpen day. They probably would have took them out a little earlier. So there's a lot to go on with the Dodgers pitching, but it's definitely not necessarily an issue of talent. It's just an issue of not having availability.
Yeah, and as you know, at this point, Clayton Kershaw is probably going to be back before Blake Snell. For that, Shohei Ohtani might be pitching in games before Blake Snell. We don't know, probably not. But that's more a choice. I feel like they're slow playing that a little bit. But maybe one of these guys. Justin Robleski looked decent in the spring. He's got talent. The fact that he hasn't been good yet in the big leagues this year. Maybe it means he's not going to, but he'll probably definitely get more chances. Bobby Miller will, as much as last one was terrible, he'll probably get another chance at this point just because of
he can throw 100 pitches.
Yeah. Go ahead and wear one. Hopefully you can get through at least 5 innings with those 100 pitches, and maybe he surprises us. But this was, like we talked about a few times, this depth that the Dodgers built, they knew that some of that depth wouldn't be available at the beginning of the season. And, in Kershaw and Ohtani and Emmett Sheehan. They didn't necessarily know that Tony Gonsolin would be out to start the season. They kind of had penciled him in some of that depth and kind of probably expected Knack and Robleski to fare a little bit better when they were serving as depth. But depth is not about, it's just not realistic to have 5 Cy Young Award winners in your rotation and 5 more on standby for when guys get hurt. That's not how rosters work, unfortunately. And so, the nature of depth is that most of your depth is stashed away at AAA, which means most of your depth is AAA pitchers, like Justin Robleski and Landon Knack. And it's the goal of the depth is to get the Dodgers through the season more than to dominate. And this is why I always as exciting as this team was and everything, it was never very likely that they were going to break the record for all-time wins, just because even when you're on paper, like the Dodgers are, I don't know how conservative they're being with Blake Snell, but they're being more conservative than they would be if it was September, and they needed him for October. Same with, that's the nature of the beast. When you're the Dodgers, they're going to be conservative because they want these guys healthy in October, and you're going to play things differently as the season goes on. Yeah.
It's funny how we get to this point every year where, Dodgers don't play necessarily too well. And then it's, see you in 26. Thank you, fans, all that type of stuff. Yes, the Dodgers, as presently playing April 23rd, are not playing like the best team in baseball, are not playing their best baseball. But it doesn't matter right now. If we're sitting here in June and the bottom of the order is still, a black hole, then the conversation becomes, okay, they might have to make a move at the deadline. If we're sitting here in June and Blake Snell's not back and, we haven't seen Shohei Ohtani on the mound yet and maybe another injury happens, then, the conversation switches to what do they get at the deadline. When we get into August and September and some of these things are still the issue, then it's just a matter of, playoffs are a crapshoot and they're just going to get in and see what happens. And, I would imagine if we go back to April 23rd episode from last year, not even knowing if the Dodgers won that day, lost that day, were playing well or not playing well, I can imagine it wasn't an indication that they were going to win the World Series.
Yeah, April 23rd last year, I'm going to tell you, On April 23rd last year, the Dodgers were 14-11. They had just beaten the Nationals 4-1 the day after beating the Mets 10-0. But that was after a 3-game losing streak. And that was kind of at the start of the Dodgers turning things around. They got as bad as 12-11. So they were on a 2-game winning streak. They ended up getting up to 26-13. So they went 14-2. We were 2 games into the 14-2 stretch. So you know what? Things can turn around pretty quickly. Things turned out okay for the Dodgers last year, and the Dodgers this year are ahead of where they were. And that's kind of my biggest takeaway all the time. The reason why it's easy for me to not stress too much about these games is remembering these previous seasons. You know, I was thinking about 2021 the other day when the Dodgers, they lost opening day to the Rockies, and then they won a bunch in a row, and then they were terrible for a while, you know, and I can't remember the specifics now. I was looking at the other day, but, you know, every season you've got these situations. I'm looking at 2021 now. So they lost opening day, then they won 5 in a row, and then they lost 1, and then they won 8 in a row to go to 13-2. And remember, we were like, the Dodgers, they're unstoppable, 13-2. And then a couple weeks later, they are 16-12 because they went 3-10. You know, like, and those 2021 Dodgers end up having a really successful regular season, which then didn't finish off in the postseason. But it's all, you know, it's baseball. The fun of baseball is watching the 6 months, the ups and downs, and not stressing too much about the big picture. What does this mean? Does this mean Max Muncy is going to strike out in Game 4 of the World Series? Does this mean that, you know, it doesn't mean anything? It means baseball is a long season. And, you know, last year, this time, we hadn't even thought the name Tommy Edman, and he ended up being NLCS MVP. And, you know, there's a lot. I would guess last year, you and I, if we'd heard of Ben Kasparius, we definitely didn't remember that we had heard of Ben Kasparius. He pitched in the World Series. You know, things change. It's a long season.
Yeah, and things can change with the team currently on the field. Things can change with the team not currently on the Dodgers or in the organization. There's a lot to get into. One thing that we'd like to see change is Austin Barnes being the backup catcher for a few different reasons. And Will Smith sat on Wednesday because of an injury. And we're just going to talk about Austin Barnes because it was not a fun day to be Austin Barnes. Or make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing better than catching a live MLB game, whether it's the crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, the smell of the food, the giveaways, whatever it is. If you're looking to go last minute, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever. And with last minute deals, all-in pricing, and a lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the stress out of buying MLB tickets. Plus, ticket prices drop as Game Time gets closer, meaning you can score an incredible deal. And Game Time is the official ticketing partner of Locked On. And as the Dodgers come back home this weekend, there's a Dave Roberts bobblehead giveaway. There's I think another giveaway or a Japanese Heritage Night. There's a lot of different things coming up. You can go get your tickets and meet your needs with Game Time. And if you've never been to Dodger Stadium or you're going to sit somewhere new, you can check out the preview of your exact seat before purchasing, so you have no surprises when you get to the stadium. They have Game Time picks, which makes help getting the best deals effortless. There's a lot of different things that Game Time has to help you get those tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you for being an everydayer if you are one, and everydayer is just someone that listens or watches every day. You can become one by listening or watching every day. You can make it easier by subscribing, and you'll get notified when our episodes are ready or when we're going live on YouTube or when we post, an excerpt about the game or whatever it is. There's a lot of different benefits to being an everydayer. There's a lot of different benefits to being an everydayer that is also subscribed. So make sure to do all that. And Jeff, Will Smith sat because he had a little bit of sore wrist from the play at the plate the night before. That means Austin Barnes had to play, and we both, made it very clear that we aren't the guys with Austin Barnes support. There's not a lot of support for Austin Barnes here and there's a few reasons why. One is that he's not very good at hitting anymore. One is that he doesn't control the run game at all. And then we get to Wednesday. He does get on base thanks to an error. He did actually have a hit earlier in the game. He gets on base due to an error. The Dodgers have first and second, and top order coming up, and it looks like we're gonna have a chance to maybe get some more runs. And Austin Barnes gets picked off at first base with the runner in front of him, looking like not even Andy Pages has looked that bad.
Yeah, it was probably the worst pickoffs I've seen in several years, at least. I can't think of a worse one. Doesn't mean it's the worst one I've ever seen, but I can't off the top of my head remember a worse one because, like you said, it's just not paying attention. Your job when there's a guy in first, like most guys they're taking their lead off and they're standing facing second base, so they have the first baseman in their peripheral vision. Like once you can't see Michael Busch anymore, you got to be moving back towards first base. Just a really bad base running play. And again, we've never seen Austin Barnes make that base running play. It's not like that's indicative of, Austin Barnes is also a terrible base runner. It's just like when you're not providing other value to the team, you can't, when you do actually get on base, go ahead and get yourself picked off, especially when at this point, he's up to a 174 batting average right now, which means compared to his defense, his bat is what's keeping him on the roster at this point. Because it's just a foregone conclusion. There's been a couple times I've been like, well, why don't they just make that third throw over to first base? Maybe you catch the guy off guard and pick him off because he doesn't think you're going to throw over a third time. The alternative is they're going to steal second anyway. So, worst case scenario, you balk and he moves, cut out the middleman of Austin Barnes not throwing him out stealing, because Austin Barnes is not going to throw him out stealing. And he's just a backup catcher. And I understand the mindset, and he's the captain and people love him, blah, 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 blah. I've said it, 20 times in the last 3 years. There's very little, in fact, nothing that Austin Barnes brings to this team that he couldn't bring just as well from the 60-day injured list,
Yeah, especially after a postseason in which we saw Will Smith catch every game and handle the pitching staff and all that. Like, even if before there was maybe pitchers that prefer to pitch to Barnes, or there was numbers that supported, Barnes catching ERA is better than Smith's catching ERA, blah, blah, whatever. Okay, but that's not the case. We just saw Will Smith, run the gauntlet of having multiple bullpen games, multiple pitchers through an entire postseason and handling that and not having any issues. And then, you get to it now, and yeah, he's not going to play every game. Will Smith's not going to be able to play every game. Austin Barnes is going to have to play sometimes. And you would hope that as a backup catcher, we wouldn't have to spend a segment on you because you play, once or twice a week, you get an occasional hit here or there, and that's about it. But, now and this is more so because he's been on the team for a while, and, we've talked about him getting to this point. If it was some random catcher they signed in the offseason to be the backup catcher, it probably wouldn't be a big deal. But this is just where we're at now. And,
I got to interrupt you real quick, Vin. Something's making me laugh in the chat. Ryan thinks he got a gotcha. He says Austin Barnes' on-base percentage is .435, so that means he's better than Muncy, right? Ryan read the stats wrong. That's Austin Barnes' OPS. That's his on-base percentage plus his slugging percentage, because his on-base percentage is the same as his batting average, 174, because he has 0 walks this year. So nope, not better than Max Muncy, not better than anybody. It's just, and when you've got, I understand not calling up Dalton Rushing to be the backup catcher, because Dalton Rushing is a true prospect. He needs to be playing regularly. If Will Smith's wrist injury sends him to the injured list, I think Dalton Rushing gets the call up. I think that's what they do with that extra 40-man roster spot. If Smith's wrist is hurting still, and he needs to go on the IL, it's Dalton Rushing time, but not to be a backup. But Hunter Fiducia, yeah, call him up to be a backup. Bat's left-handed, and so you can be strategic about which days you give Will Smith off, against tough righties or whatever. But yeah, Austin Barnes, I love you. And I see a lot of people say, well, they can't get rid of him because of Clayton Kershaw. And I just want to address that, because the Dodgers literally traded AJ Ellis when Ellis was Kershaw's literal best friend, and Kershaw was the ace of the team, the most important player on the team. They traded his best friend. You think they're not going to get rid of Austin Barnes because they want him to catch the 50 innings that Clayton Kershaw is going to pitch this year. It just doesn't. I don't understand why people. There's so many things that people just, they hear it and they think, "Ooh, that sounds smart. I'm going to repeat that for the rest of my life," even though it's obviously not true. And, whether it's Mookie Betts shouldn't podcast because it affects his hitting. Dude got 3 hits today when his podcast dropped, or it's, obviously the Kershaw and Barnes thing, or, Mookie gets worn out playing shortstop, whatever it is, you hear it and you just repeat it, even when there's no evidence that it's true.
Yeah. I think with the other thing with Barnes is that right now, like, there's literally no benefit. Like you said, he could do the same thing he does from the bench, on the team. The most he's going to do at the plate is give you a single. Like, he hasn't hit for any power at all the last few years. The best he's going to do behind the plate is catch the ball. He's not necessarily, he's not going to give you anything in terms of, throwing runners out or even really being close to throwing runners out. And yeah, I know there's a couple people, he caught a couple Roki starts when Roki started turning things around. I don't think there's a correlation there. And if there is, then, maybe we'll see Barnes become Roki's personal catcher. And then maybe there's a reason to keep Barnes on the roster because you can, say, who was Greg Maddox's personal catcher back in the day? Like, Eddie Perez or whatever. Like, yeah, sometimes that happens. And sometimes, hey, you're serving a role. But right now, like, he's not serving a role that, of anything other than he's, liked by the team, and the Dodgers maybe don't value backup catcher as much as other people do. And it's one of those things where the bottom of the order is already bad. So that doesn't help Barnes because, now when we talk about the bottom of the order, we think about Barnes. So now, like, when it's Rojas and whoever and Barnes, you're like, like, we're not going to do anything. But I'm telling you, like, when the ceiling is he's going to hit a single, 80 to 90 mile an hour exit velocity, it's not really fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think he's going anywhere. I wish he was. I was hoping he hurt himself on that pickoff today or something. I don't wish injury on him. I wish the injured list on him. And maybe that's being pedantic. That's why I've got that English degree on my wall up there, because I can draw distinctions like that. I don't want anybody to get hurt, but I want Austin Barnes to be off the active roster, and I want him to be in the dugout. Be in the injured list in the dugout, cheering people on, being Sam, being the team captain, all those things you do. Maybe even go out and warm up a pitcher in between innings after Will Smith bats last, while he's getting his gear on. But yeah, he's not bringing anything to the team, and I wish he didn't have to play ever.
Yeah. Mark's asking what happens if Smith is hurt before the playoffs.
Dalton Rushing will be in the big leagues before the season is over. Dalton Rushing will be ready to be. I expect Dalton Rushing on the postseason roster over Austin Barnes this year.
Yeah. I mean, if that was the case, then yeah, it's Rushing. If it happens that late in the season and we haven't seen Rushing, then we're going to see Rushing, and we're going to have to hope that he can catch fire and maybe be surprised of guys don't know how to pitch to him yet. So, all right, Jeff, you got anything else?
No, I don't think so.
All right, that's going to do it for today's episode. The Dodgers won't have to face Pete Armstrong or the Cubs until maybe October. Hopefully not. Or I guess at that point, who cares? Like, if you play them in October, you play them in October. But they don't have to face them anymore in the regular season.
At Wrigley Field is great.
Yeah, you don't have to play them anymore in the regular season. And, the Dodgers will move on. They got the Pirates. They got a bunch of games with the Marlins coming up. Another series with the Braves. So hopefully Tides are not that they're playing bad, but just play better and keep the offensive up. Have all facets start syncing up, like good pitching, good defense, good hitting, and all that type of stuff. So we'll talk to you guys. No game tomorrow, but we'll definitely have more to talk about. So that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. And make sure to check us out wherever you get podcasts and on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to get notified when episodes are ready or when we're going live. Make sure to check out Locked On MLB Game Night for your second or whatever listen. It's on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you get podcasts. You get the analysis from all over the league. You can go beyond the podcast, come Locked On Dodgers Insider by going to joinsubtext.com/LockedOnDodgers. You can get text directly from us, keeping you up to date with the Dodgers, and join our Discord server. You can find us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff's on Twitter at Snydog. I'm at Vincent91. You can DM us any questions or comments. You can also send those via email, lockdowndodgers@gmail.com, or via voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car, if you're at home, touch my device by podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.